Evening, members. New Year to you all. First of all, obviously, as usual, I have to go through a few housekeeping items. Welcome officers and members of the public to the meeting, the Policy Development Committee. Please switch your mobile phones to silent. Now, please ask those attending virtually to switch off your microphone to avoid any disruption during the meeting. The meeting is being recorded and will be available in due course on the Council's YouTube channel. Reminder for councillors, to ensure that those attending virtually can hear the proceedings and the recording to capture the entire meeting, please ensure that you project your voice and speak clearly. Please remember it is a formal meeting and therefore do not refer to each other by first name. Well, then it is apologies, please, Kelly.
Thank you, Chair. I have apologies from councillors Hunt, Jones and Turton.
Thank you very much. Item 2 is to approve as a correct record of minutes of the meeting held on the 16th of November 2023. Members all happy with the minutes?
Moved.
Thank you. Very much.
Sorry, I wanted to ask a question actually on the minute.
Go ahead. Okay.
I'm just trying to find it off the bottom. It was to do with the, there's talk of a motion going to the full council regarding the dentist thing. Is that presumed that's now been put to one side of it? I'm trying to find.
Quite extensive minutes, if you could sort of
No, yeah.
narrow it down. John. Councillor Petrinos.
Yeah, since then we've had further contact with a range of potential people to come to a dental meeting. I thought it might be more appropriate to actually finish the work before we do any motions rather than start off halfway through. Yeah, I mean, things have developed, it's very encouraging.
Certainly quite a few responses the last couple of weeks, yeah.
They'll happen later, basically.
So you changed your mind, I think you're right.
It's all very fine.
Okay.
Yeah, I just need to leave it, can't find it, sorry. It's page 9, D.
Yeah.
We have those.
It's all D,
Madam Chairman, I'm abstaining because I wasn't present at the meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Warden. Yeah. Councillor Clayton, it's on page 5 and it's under the resolve here. The last one for that. Oh, is it?
No, it's nothing.
Page 5 on one.
Sorry, it's page 5 of the printed minutes, page 9 on.
PDF. So,
Some of
Yeah.
the 2 pages of us, the mouse keeps on.
so that should be done at the next one, yeah. Right, thank you. I'll find those now for today. And it doesn't have. Item 3, I have no items to bring forward as chair of any urgency. That's item 3, so item 4, are there any declarations of interest, please?
I've received none, Chairman.
No. Right, thank you very much. Item 5 is to agree the agenda between part A and part B, and there is no part B tonight. So we go straight into internal items, item 6, which is service plans report by the chief executive, which has been circulated. And
Okay. Members that have been on the council for a while will recall that around this time of the year you look through the service plans. And the service plans in previous years would contain all of the actions that contribute towards the delivery of the corporate plan. Over the last couple of years, we've developed programs which really encompass most of those actions that go toward contributing towards the corporate plan. So the 5 programs that were established related to customer focus, environment enhancement, housing and community safety, regeneration and economic growth, and organisational development. And those are the programs that link directly to the corporate plan and are the actions that really do contribute towards delivery of that corporate plan. Those programs are reported through this committee and through Strategy and Resources Committee as part of the quarterly business report. So you get an update every quarter on progress on those programs, and each program has got a senior responsible officer linked to them, and those are listed in the introduction to the report. So as a consequence, the service plans themselves now don't contain those strategic actions that are contained within the programs. The service plans are now more or less the more operational actions that we're going to carry out during the course of the year. And service plans that you have are all of the service plans. They're attached to the agenda. As part of the discussions in advance of this meeting, we spoke about whether to have all of the heads of service present or whether we would concentrate on the main areas that members were likely to ask questions on. And that's what we've done. So in terms of heads of service, you have John, you have Nina, you have Mark here, covering finance, housing, environmental enhancement. That doesn't stop you asking any questions on any of the other service plans that are attached. And if you do, then we'll try and answer those questions as they come up. This is your opportunity really to look at those service plans, raise any questions, raise any concerns that you may have. But all I'd say is let's not get confused with the actions that we have in the programs. That's something that will be reviewed as part of the review of the corporate plan. And if you recall, we had the workshop a couple of months before Christmas, and we should shortly, as a full council, be getting the draft of the corporate plan come to you. And once that's been approved, then those programs will be amended through Strategy and Resources to reflect them. So these service plans are the more operational actions, as I say. So happy to take any questions, Chair.
Thanks, Ken. Councillor Nina.
I've got questions on several of them. I'm just wondering, Chair, do you want to go through them one by one and take questions, or would you like me to give you a flurry of questions on all the different ones now?
One at a time, or
Yeah,
is it?
yeah, we can.
It's
Yeah,
just quite a few.
we can just go through them.
Individually, yeah.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
Shall I start on the building control one?
Yeah.
It on page, I'm gone, I can't read it. 26. I know that building control have had problems with recruitment, but the company, my company, runs a quality assurance scheme under ISO 9001, and I'm just slightly alarmed that while building control are trying to run that sort of system, they've not had any audits for 18 months. And with the spotlight that's on building control services nationally with the new Building Safety Act coming in, I just wondered if, what steps have you taken to manage quality control in North and Mid Devon building control if you're not running that ISO 9001 system?
Yeah,
John?
I should have mentioned actually, so John, before we go elsewhere, I should have mentioned that following the departure of Jeremy Mann, we have some interim arrangements in place. So John is looking after building control, Nina is looking after housing and environmental health, I'm looking after planning, and Sarah Higgins is looking after the crematorium. So those are the services. So John is the head of service in relation to building control at the present time.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So in terms of obviously the ISO 9001 quality assurance, completely right. Obviously, we've been under-resourced in building control for certainly the last couple of years. pleased to report that that has improved significantly since last few months. We've managed to appoint into a number of the posts. So whereas in the autumn of 22 we had 7 vacant posts, we now only have 3, and those 3 remaining vacant posts are being advertised next week and into next month. So hopefully by tail end of this financial year we'll have all posts recruited into. The post we have appointed into is the technical support team, and they pull together a lot of the accreditation information for the assurance. So that team are working on that in this quarter, hence the request date to extend this action only until March 24. So hopefully by the end of this quarter, that accreditation and assurance will be brought up to date in order to have that assurance audited. In the meantime, there's also been an internal audit carried out by Devon Audit Partnership on behalf of both North Devon and Mid Devon Authority on building control, and that draft report has come forwards, and management are just getting the responses back to that audit, so that should be finalised in the next couple of weeks as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. Councillor Weaver, do you want to?
Well, yeah, what's the next one? Next one's on page 35, which is in the,
Well, should we,
There's,
are there any others before we get there?
are there any other questions on building control?
yeah, maybe we'll go through each
Yeah.
section and yeah. Councillor Bushell.
Officer Triggs has previously mentioned about the office usage of building control. I wondered whether he had an update as to whether we're going to continue having the large offices and have people work remotely, or whether there are any changes there. I'm sure that your recruitment is probably in the middle, so you can't make a decision at the moment. But I wondered whether you'd identified the benefits and the savings for people working remotely or working from the office. There are pros and cons for both, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And a number of the building control surveyors obviously do work remotely because they're out on site a lot of the time as well. So they do use the Woodlands base as a base. A lot of the admin function is carried out also at the Woodlands function, but we will keep that under review. Obviously, there is a hybrid approach in place, not just for building control, but across the whole authority, where teams are working some from home, some from the office. And I don't foresee that changing much moving forwards. That will continue. But in terms of the size of Woodlands, we will keep that under review to make sure that it is efficient and that we're not just retaining sort of vacant space not being utilised. But there are more officers going into that building, and obviously the recruitment of the new officers that we bring on, especially the technical support and the admin team, they are more based at Woodlands than at home.
And if people are working remotely, obviously working as part of a team and feeling part of the team, that's a strong reason to stay working within a team. How do we overcome the issues of remote working and not being physically present with your team to make those bonds?
So what we've tried to apply that culture across the whole authority is that even if there are teams where they are predominantly working from home, that they do actually come into the office for periods of time, on days when others are coming in as well, not just on actual times when there's others that aren't coming in. So that they are coming in for things such as team meetings, training events, training days, and also coming into the wider organisation as well. So those teams that are also based outside of Rinsworthy, such as Woodlands or Linton House, also coming up and being part of the team here as well. So heads of service are aware of the home working areas where obviously people can feel remote. So it's important that we are supporting those staff so they do feel part of the team. We're coming in for team meetings and training, but also heads of service and managers will keep in touch with those employees to make sure that that regular keep in touch and support is there for those staff.
Okay.
Any other question? Councillor Warden.
Thank you, yes.
On building control?
Yeah, still building control, Madam Chairman. The extension of time request by Mid Devon, is that actually causing us any problems, or is it just that we've got to be patient and wait until they're, they're bringing it in up to date?
For the vacant posts in Mid Devon or with?
Yeah, it's the one towards the end of your section. It's to do with building safety regulator operational standards and new
The new system, yeah. So there's an upgrade to the current software system. That software system is a joint partnership with Mid Devon. So the ICT is provided by Mid Devon. That software upgrade is due this quarter. But obviously we're in the hands of Mid Devon, their ICT team for that. But that is planned to be done by the 1st of April. But that is linked to changes that are coming forwards from the building safety regulator. And that's to do with the new regulator coming in for the high-rise buildings. So those changes means that we've got software changes, but those software changes from the provider are linked to ongoing changes that are still being worked through with the building safety regulator. So it's sort of goes cap in hand really, is the software provider can only do things once the building safety regulator has applied changes. Those changes will come through in the software upgrade, but the team are ready to go. But obviously there are then back office changes they will need to make within their team as well.
Okay, thank you.
John. Anything else on building control members? Okay. We move on now to customer focus. Who's doing? Oh, did you want to speak, John? Oh, on it. Who's doing that in Sarah's?
Sarah Higgins is the head of service. She's not here tonight.
No.
We'll answer any questions that do arise.
Yes, yeah.
Well, it's actually not about that, so it's specifically about customer focus, but the item on there, I mean, I know there's a programme about customers, isn't it? And I just wonder why this isn't in it, and it's separately on the service plan. And there's a number of, about 7 different instances where I had the same sort of thought, this looks like it should be in the programme. But I have to admit, I confess, I didn't go back to the programmes and check what was in there first before I asked this question. But I mean,
Is it you?
Which one in particular?
well, there's only one on the customer focus one, isn't there? Oh, I'm sorry, the first page, the very first page,
All right.
page 27, where it talks about, you know, hundreds of emails and consuming and simple web form, changing it all up. Isn't it part of the customer focus program?
I think the wider, I mean, the programs are sort of the overarching sort of strategic projects that we're doing, obviously of which everything's like digital with customers, etc. Some of the more day-to-day operational things that feed into that are sort of the things that come from the service plan. So, for example, the first one around replacing emails with a web form, we wouldn't have a program about that, but obviously that does link in with obviously the digital program that we have got with the customer focus. So the difference between the programs, whereas it's like, as the chief executive said previously, before the programs, you had a service plan with everything on it. If we think of the pyramid that Nina kindly drew out when we do the performance reporting, and we see where service plans and the programs fit, the service plans are more the day-to-day operational things that are happening in the period, and then the program sits above that. So the service plan actions feed into some of the things that are happening in the program.
Yeah, I think probably what I'm trying to say is that it's my feeling that there's a blurred line between the programs and the service plans, and it's figuring out where it is.
Yeah, I think there are, and I think there probably are instances where one could be in one plan or in the other, and probably need to another. But, yeah.
Thank you, Jeff. We do a quick assessment around programme worthiness. So we talk about, are there multiple teams involved in delivering it? Is there a risk? Is there an immature project manager delivering this? Is there a huge community impact on those changes? So it's a bit of a judgment call, Councillor Petrinos, really, as to how wide, how complex, how expensive and how risky it is. So that line that you're referring to then isn't particularly falling into any of those categories, but it will give a new way of working. So when we're doing those process reviews, when we're looking to go digital by design and cut out some of those ways to come in, having that form will enable better customer focus. But that piece of work itself is fairly operational and contained within the ICT team.
Okay. Anything else on that?
No, I don't know if this is the right place to ask this, but I think customer focus is something that needs to be key for the organisation as a whole. I don't mean to pick on anyone, but Mark, for waste and recycling, could you answer how you're trying to make your customers feel heard and wanted and needed, and you know, all of the positive things when things don't work 100%, and I'm, you know, working well in my ward and we work together well, and the actions were taken very quickly to change those. So I have nothing against what you're doing, but I'm sure Councillor Jones would like me to ask this question on your behalf. And just by way of priming, could I ask Ken afterwards to answer the same question about planning, please?
Yeah, I think in terms of customer focus, when I came into post 2.5 years ago, or however long it was, my background is very much sort of frontline services like leisure, where I have a lot of experience of dealing with customers, and I like to think that over the last couple of years we've made a huge effort to look at the way we do deal with customer complaints. I think Sarah's team are great. The customer services team are very, very good. We've got good systems in place for logging calls and complaints and keeping track of them. What I've tried to do with the waste and recycling team, who have a very, very busy daily function, which is to make sure the vans go out and that we've got enough vehicles and enough people and we're hitting all the properties that we should be on a certain day. But what we need to do is make sure that we're working as effectively and efficiently as possible with the customer services team to make sure that we're really focusing on repeat miscollections and not missing the same people time and time again, because I think most customers are fairly understanding about being missed once. If it happens again, it gets frustrating. If it goes beyond that, that gets, you know, that's when
You get
comes under a official complaint. So masses of effort goes into that on a daily basis to make sure that we are focusing on repeat miscollections. I think actually I know Councillor Jones did request some figures from myself and Ken recently, and what is I think always important to remember is when you look at the between 45 and 47,000 collections that we make every single week, the actual number of complaints that we get are less than 1% on all of that. You know, that's black, green, and recycling. That's still, you know, a high number of complaints because we are, you know, the biggest operation, I think, frontline operation in the council.
And you touch,
But it's not, you know, we're doing pretty well, you know, nationally. When you look at us compared to other authorities, we're doing quite well. I mean, it's not in my service plan, but it's certainly part of the customer focus program, I believe. You know, we're looking at our systems and the culture within our teams to make sure we put the customer first all the time.
Thank you.
Just to clarify something you said,
Yeah.
you talked about 1%, that's like 400 or 500 a week, 400, is that right? Is that about
Yeah, but it's less than 1%.
Okay.
Is what I'm saying. You know, so I think over the Christmas holiday period, there was a couple of days where we had something like 250 to 300 complaints, which was about on par with the same day within the whole Christmas holiday period as last year. But that's about as high as it gets. You know, that's.
I just I've got some complaints, you know, to me, like you do, about missed collections over Christmas, because we were one of the unlucky ones that got the missed collection because we were collected on the wrong day. So we missed a whole cycle effectively. And I expected there to be a bit of chaos really afterwards. And it wasn't really. There was a few complaints, but they seemed to be sorted out, and it was much better than I expected.
I was the same where I live. You know, we were, because of where our collections fall, we missed a week, but it was,
I've heard of them.
it was fine. You know, it was, so, you know, it went, it has gone pretty smoothly. Yeah. So,
We've actually gone into your service plan now. The next thing is environmental enhancement. According to mine.
Councillor Bush raised a question about planning and customer focus, and I'll answer that really by following up on what Mark said,
Okay.
which is generally, I guess, not specifically about planning, but as an organisation, we've put a huge amount of effort into putting customers at the centre of the services that we provide. And that's not just in planning, not just in waste and recycling, it's right across the board. We look at our purpose behind the service. We look at whether we're delivering against that purpose. We put a huge amount of effort into making sure that the teams are aware that realistically, and you know, very realistically, the reason we're here is to deliver good services to the public. That is our sole purpose. And that's, as Mark said, part of the culture of this organisation there. So if you look in waste and recycling, their approach to customer focus will be the same as in planning, as in environmental health. It's part of the culture of this organisation. So I don't think you can differentiate between the services. In planning specifically, their purpose is to say yes to good development as quickly as possible. That's their purpose. And we judge whether you know, we're successful in that. As Mark touched on as well, we've also got a programme in place around customer focus, which is about providing people with much easier access to our services, much quicker access to our services, but also about ingraining that culture within the organisation.
So on following the governance meeting, I had a conversation with another councillor on my drive home. They equally said that they were feeling that the level of extensions being asked by normal domestic customers of the planning department was exceptionally high. I won't name the councillor because they said that they had also been advising people to refuse an extension. Could you give us the pathway of what the end point of where you would be happy with the planning department and the way that it satisfies the customers' wants and feelings and expectations?
There seems to be a bit of a focus on extensions of time that are granted by planning. What I would say is that's part of the national scheme. We have certain times to determine applications depending on their type of application, it could be 8 weeks, 12 weeks, all within agreed timescales. And every local authority will, where appropriate, agree extensions of time where it's not going to be possible to determine the application within those 8 weeks, and we report against that against national indicators. What we're doing here, as well as reporting against those national indicators, is we've started to report against the average end-to-end time to determine an application from the date that it's registered to the date that the decision notice goes out the door. And what I want to see, and I'm sure councillors will as well, is a reduction in that end-to-end time. I'd like to see a continuous improvement in that end-to-end time so that we are delivering against the purpose that I just mentioned, which is saying yes to good development as quickly as possible. I personally don't like to focus on the 8 weeks or 12 weeks because I don't think that necessarily gives you a good decision at the end of the day. You know, I have seen authorities that, you know, comply with the 8-week timetable, but decisions will be going out the door in 7 weeks and 6 days. That's not necessarily as quick as possible. You also, it can also drive bad behaviour and then just getting the decision notice out the door to comply with the 8 weeks, and it might not be a good decision. I much prefer to focus, or much prefer to continue with our focus, as I said, of making sure we deliver good development, good decisions as quickly as possible and keep measuring those end-to-end times. But we will continue to measure the national indicators.
Thanks, Dan. Just going back into customer focus,
You want to go back to customer, but we were going on to planning again.
we've got just one more question from, councillor.
I wanted to ask about the crematorium
change in legislation on page 33, which I'm hearing about. And it says that it will place a significant new responsibility on officers to authorise each cremation. And it's partly just to know a little bit more about how those officers will be supported. If it's something that, to me, it raises some kind of alarm that we all will be aware of the importance of signing off these kinds of things. It used to be, I believe, 2 GPs used to do this, certainly. That's what my understanding was. So, is there presumably going to be lots of training? I just had loads of questions around that and even slight concerns, I suppose. But if it's national legislation, presumably we just have to go with it. I don't know. I'm sorry, I don't know whose remit it is.
It's Sarah Higgins' remit. There will be training, but we're also trying to build in place a continuity plan and provide extra support for the manager there. So we're looking at putting a new post in place that will hopefully eventually take over from the manager role. That individual retires, provides continuity, but in the meantime provides some extra resource within the teams.
Thank you. Councillor Clayton,
Thank you, Chair. Page 30.
are we on customer?
Customer.
Right.
Page 30, review of single occupied your discount. I'm just wondering what the purpose of that review is. Is it because we feel that perhaps some people are filling the system and are claiming it and they shouldn't be claiming it? Is there a big problem? Why is that come about?
It's single occupancy.
Single occupancy discount, Chair, 25% discount. And how does a computer program remedy that? I presume that a lot of single occupier discount is applied for by the customer themselves. So what's going to change here? What's triggered this? And I don't get it. I know you'd always be trying to make sure that it's accurate, but how do you make something accurate from a computer program? You're looking at electoral register, I don't know.
Yeah, so, Chair, I can answer that one. So obviously, it's individuals who obviously apply for it. Obviously, if you live on your own, you're entitled to 25% discount off your council tax bill. That is something that is on continuous review anyway. But obviously, we want to try and maximise to make sure that is accurate as possible. So there are pieces of software, and also there is something called National Fraud Initiative where we match information. So if you've got data on your council tax system that is telling you that somebody's got a single occupancy discount, the electoral registration system is telling us that there are 2 people living there, then obviously there's a question to ask about whether which one is correct. The review that Devon Audit Partnership are carrying out is on behalf of all Devon authorities to have a consistent approach around how that information is reviewed, because different authorities will take different times to go out and review. Some councils will review by sending a letter out. Some people will do other checks and also carry out visits as well. So the review that Devon Audit Partnership are carrying out, our internal auditors are doing this review on behalf of all Devon authorities. They're not charging us because the benefit is within the connection fund itself. So the biggest beneficiary is the county council, who obviously get the higher proportion of the council tax income. So it's being paid for by Devon County Council, but the district will benefit from it as well. So it's a review being carried out, so it's saving resource on our team in order to carry out that review. And when it's carried out, the benefits are that the collection fund and the council tax income should hopefully increase, because anyone who is claiming it incorrectly, those accounts will be rectified a lot quicker than they would be if we were doing it all individually.
Check out. Can I ask a follow-up question on this? What happens then when we find that some kind of fraud has been committed? Do we pursue it? Do we take them to court? Is that our policy to do that?
Depending on
have we done it?
the accounts get rectified. If there has been fraud that's taken place, then we have got a counter fraud team within Devon Audit Partnership. So again, depending on the circumstance, the appropriate action will be taken. Sometimes it's legitimate errors. Some people will just forget to tell us, and it may only be a short period of time. On other cases, there may be different circumstances. So depending on the individual circumstance will depend on the action that we take, and will depend on the action that Devon Audit Partnership will take.
Right, okay.
The most important thing is the account will be corrected and also backdated. So also if something had been more longevity, that bill will then obviously go out to the customer to make sure that it's rectified and the public purse is corrected. But if there is more, other attention needed to take to it, then that will be taken to accountability.
Right, thanks. I bring it up, I suspect that the fraud going on nationwide here is much wider than some people think. And the problem is that people then do not register on the actual registration, and I don't know how else it can be solved.
And
It's stopping people from voting, well, they're doing it themselves in order to save paying council tax.
And the electoral red matching is just one element of the review, so we don't just rely just solely on that one. Everybody who's getting a single occupancy discount, there will be a review carried out on everybody, so that will be letters be sent, other means of checking that information on those properties. So the electoral registration match is just one. We do other matches with HMRC data, etc. So there's lots of other sources of database that we look to see, is the person claiming single occupancy discount, is it correct? And if it's not, then there'll be further investigations done. But this review is trying to get a consistent approach across Devon so that all districts are having it done at the same time. And also the resources being provided by Devon Order Partnership, rather than taking up valuable resource of our own offices, you can then obviously concentrate on increasing the collection rates on the wider council tax base.
Thanks.
Thank you.
On page 29, there's a thing about the updating of the software. And it does mention the unexpected complexity of extracting the asset information. Is that going to go ahead? It says something on the 31st of January, but sorry, this is the service desk system.
Yeah.
It's on the second page. Also, it sounds like you're putting everything into the cloud, which is interesting. Is there anything very hardware-based system as well? That's where it is in.
It's the top desk. Top desk.
Yeah, so, Top Desk is the ICT sort of service desk, so that's where the staff, all the 420 ICT users we've got, if they've got any issues, they go through that system to replace that. So I'm not sure what's the action now.
It does mention that somebody
in the new services.
muted retirement as well. Standby.
Staff.
To be lost for retirement.
Say from the retiring of the current service desk scheme.
Yeah.
That might be one that we need to get back to you on.
But I think what it's saying is that it's replacing a current system of which there'll be a financial saving associated with that as well.
Okay. When, if I can just add, when it's talking about assets, it's talking about the ICT assets, not the assets of ongoing council. So it's the help desk that manages, so this is an asset, every one of these is registered to offices. This is the system that records all of that so that the service desk can apply work to the individual assets.
Can we move on to environmental councillor now, please?
I'd like to start with toilets. This is page 35. It's an interesting use of the word asset, talking about public toilets. But I see that we've made approaches to town and parish councils about transfer of public toilets. And I know some councils have accepted them and others haven't. Whereabouts are we in terms of the public toilet estate asset?
So yeah, they are assets because every one of our assets is recorded on our asset system. So they are defined as an asset. Quite rightly, we have approached all towns and parishes about taking on those toilets. Some are further ahead than others. So assets. So the Ilfracombe ones, we've had discussions, we've agreed sort of draft heads of terms. Braunton is another one. So some are further ahead than others. We've had discussions with Combe Martin, we've had discussions with Croy. We've had discussions with all towns and parishes. The heads of terms have been agreed with some. Those assets haven't actually physically transferred over yet. So at the moment, we're still thinking up the liability and also still cleaning them. Those discussions are ongoing to get those first tranche of assets transferred over. That's likely to now be in the 24-25 financial year. Further discussions will take place with the remaining towns and parishes during that year, with a view that by the time we get to April 25, we would have decisions made on all of those public communities. Hopefully by then, some would have actually had the assets transferred over. The remaining ones, we will look to carry on those discussions through 24-25. If there are some that are still obviously undecided at that point, the original committee report that we took to members said that we would obviously need to bring those back for further member decision. So if there are still some toilets where it's still undecided as to whether those towns and parishes will take them on, we'll bring a further report back to members to make a decision on the remaining toilets that are left to transfer.
Okay, just if I could ask this a follow-up question. Is it, I'm just thinking, you know, in terms of the financial pressures that the district's under, I know we fare a lot better than a lot of other councils, just, I mean, I think because of the way that the finances have been managed in the past, but there is, you know, obviously everyone's aware there's increasing pressure on local government finances. Is there scope for maybe having more strategic discussions, particularly with the larger town and parish councils, about some of the discretionary services that we currently provide, that we might find ourselves like public toilets under pressure in terms of being able to continue to provide that service? I mean, I'm also a town councillor on Barnstaple Town Council, and I know that you know, some towns and parishes would welcome a more strategic approach rather than you know, individual approaches when it comes to things like toilets or bus station. There's another multiple discussions going on about it.
Yeah, I think there is scope for that. In the past, those discussions have usually been prefaced with a sort of requirement to inherit a car park, for instance, so that there's an income stream, and of course, that means there's an income stream less for the district council. So it doesn't necessarily solve the issue, but outside of that, yeah, we're always open to those sorts of discussions. I know in particular with Barnstaple, you know, we work quite closely with Barnstaple around management of the town centre, and that works very well. And Linton Minworth, we've got arrangements with Linton Minworth as well. So yeah, there is definitely scope for having those discussions.
Okay.
Thanks. Sorry, can I just add that action and service plan that Councillor Lee mentioned had an extension of time request for April 24. It's actually a typo. It should be April 25. Just for clarity, because obviously the discussions around that phased approach during April 24 to March 25.
Yes. Well, we must ask who these extension of time requests are aimed at. And you answer, you say yes or no.
The service plans are here for your approval this evening. So obviously, policy development normally approve the service plans. That's approving the new actions, but also if we've got previous actions such as this one, and there's an extension of time, then it's for you to obviously agree those, so that we can then finalise the service plans, and then these form part of then feeding into the budget process.
Anything else has gone in?
That's really interesting. Going back to toilets again, you said, John, that you've notified all towns and parish councils. Now, to my knowledge, none of my small rural parishes have been notified. I did pre-warn them last year, it caused a lot of panic. And obviously, if they're expected to take them on, we're going to have to up our precepts quite considerably in order to finance it. Have all the smaller parishes that got who's been?
All of those,
That's come up.
all of those that we currently clean and manage and operate, those discussions have taken place with all of those respective town and parish councils. There are still a residual, about 10, I think it is, where we previously passed them over to towns and parishes and we paid a small grant.
So,
Those ones are still built into the financial plans for 24-25. But obviously, having had an initial discussion with towns and parishes around the wider public conveniences, that will be the next discussion we'll be having with the smaller rural authorities, where we currently give a grant about that ongoing arrangement for the following year. That will be for 25-26. So at some point during 24-25, we'll be starting to have those conversations with towns and parishes in advance of those towns and parishes setting their precepts for 25-26. Because obviously, if we're no longer then going to be passing the grants over, it is only a small grant, but obviously that would be a decision then for those towns and parishes to build into their financial plans for 25-26.
We've had that lot, we've had up our precept quite considerably this year for the works we're doing on highways, so, you know, you've only pushed your parishioners so far before they start complaining about the precept.
Councillor Clayton.
Yeah, just on this, it's one thing that does generate a lot of excitement, shall we say, amongst the public, and the transfer or the use or the shutting down of public toilets. Would it be possible to ask an officer to send an update to all councillors on, it says here there's 25% progress, on what progress has been made, which councils have been consulted with, what the responses have been from those councils. I would find that useful, and also just information, so when people ask me what's going on. But is that, I know it's probably time consuming, but there will be some kind of.
We can provide a summary of those that we've had conversations with, the contact we've made. Obviously, they're all at different phases in terms of those conversations, but
And whether there's a timetable, you know, which ones are going to be seen, talk to next, and so on.
That'd be very helpful.
we can send a summary out to members that we can. Yeah.
Thank you, John. Anything else on environmental enhancement? Ken, you've got a recommendation there that we have the service and then the changes made. Either at the end or what?
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Environmental health and housing. Any questions?
Great, so. Page 39, which is the obviously Devon County Council are devolving their responsibility for funding for care leavers, and I think this came up either with Strategy and Resources or a full council, I can't remember, a while ago. It was just a question really that I see that Devon County have extended their contract, but presumably we're making an allowance in our budget for next year for picking up that service, aren't we?
So if I just come in terms of the consultation, Councillor Lever, thank you, Chair. They've been working with us to understand the implication of withdrawing this financial or this contract with us. We've pushed back quite hard because the transference will just mean that we end up with that budget constraint rather than them. But there's been a lot of conversations which have obviously been good to have. I will pass over to John in terms of the financial situation. But we haven't, although they've provided an extension of time there, I haven't seen any other communications to date as to the decisions that we will be making.
It did come up at Team Devon yesterday, sorry, John.
That's right.
And at the leader of Devon County Council talking about budget constraints generally. And what they said in relation to the 18+ homelessness, which is a bit of talking about here, is that they are still continuing to work with districts to try and find that model solution that could be implemented. So there was no indication given that it was to be cut, but no promises to continue it in the future either. It was to continue working with us to try and find that model that is sustainable.
So just a supplementary question, have we got any indication of, if the worst came to the worst and the service was cut, what it would cost to continue that in North Devon? I mean, it's something that I think, as the members were very keen that we didn't see these people just sort of slip through the gaps, and that, particularly important, stage in their lives, crucial stage in their lives.
Yeah, and those representations are being made to the county. They're very much aware of the concerns that a number of the districts have, not every district, because it's not every district that has that particular service within their area, but that's Exeter, Torridge, Somerset, are really concerned about the loss of that service. I think it's fair to say that if the funding was cut and that service was withdrawn, we probably wouldn't be in a position to be able to replicate that service because it's tendered out on the basis of it operating right across the county, alongside what we're talking about here. Sorry, was just in 3 of the districts we have residential accommodation that's provided by the county council for complex care needs. In the other districts, the service doesn't extend to residential accommodation, it extends to support that can be parachuted into the district on particular issues. And so they tend to the whole service. We know what the value of the service is in our area. If we were to tender out that ourselves, it would probably cost an awful lot more money. So what we're doing is, like I said, working with the county council to try and come up with a model on the way forward. It's not likely to look exactly the same as that current model, but in terms of what we've set aside in the budget, it's very difficult to be able to determine it because it's not likely to be the same level. If the county cut it, we're not likely to be able to replicate that.
I mean, do we know what North Devon costs the county at the moment in terms of providing that service?
Yes, I think it's about 150.
Yeah, it's somewhere between 150 and 200k.
Yeah, I can't remember the exact figure.
And presumably we'll see what allowance you're proposing to make when the budget is released, is that right?
We've not incorporated anything into the budget specifically because we don't know what that would look like. As I said, it's not likely that we'd be able to replicate that residential support because that accommodation would disappear. So it's likely that we would try and fill that gap by increasing the support that we're able to provide through our existing offices, I guess. But it's still something that we're working on to learn.
All right.
Anything else? Candidates? Government service plan is the next one. Any questions on that? I have a good feeling about that.
I have to pick that one up.
That's between us.
But it wasn't so much, wasn't really particularly a question on what's here, but it's about the continual interference, or sorry, changes in the law about elections. And I wondered whether what we as members can do to help improve voter registration, which must be, a challenging process to do. Is there anything we can do?
Yeah, I mean, the improvements, the changes that have been made to the electoral system, there's a whole raft of them and the team are gradually working their way through the changes that are implemented. In terms of electoral registration, we did a huge amount back in last year, promoting the changes, making sure the public was aware of them. It's difficult to see what else we can do at this stage. We'll continue to raise the profile of those changes as many but in terms of what members can specifically do, I can go back and speak to the team, or we can go back and speak to the team and see if there's anything in particular.
I'm sure that'd be welcome, but I don't know.
Absolutely good.
I mean, one suggestion is, not all of us, but some of us here, are members of political parties, and come election time, spend a small fortune on leaflets going through the door. I think we certainly have, I think all of the political parties in district elections did a lot about voter ID and the need to carry voter ID. I suspect if there was something sort of fairly non-political, some message that could come out from the district about voter registration and about changes to voting and voter ID, I'm sure most political parties locally would be more than happy to distribute that information through our network of even just a form of words, something like that would be helpful.
Okay, I'll see what I'm comfortable with.
Could you use that system?
we have done, I can't remember whether we're using it for the elections.
We did last week with the council tax bill and something like
Yeah.
that. We have a number of leaflets that can go in as inserts. But moving forward, we are looking at online access to council tax bills so that people can actually download them themselves rather than actually getting it through the post. So I think all that sort of advertising moving forwards, we have to look at how we can do it.
Perhaps if we can provide something to all members to show where we are with the changes, what changes are coming up. And then if you just happen to pick up on that wording and use it through the political groups, that's the two best.
Yeah, good.
That's actually sensible compromise.
Yeah, I mean, I'm particularly thinking about presumably the more underrepresented groups, people that don't have council tax bills, young people that can vote, that often get slipped through the systems because they got more important things to do than vote.
Yeah, but we certainly targeted some groups as part of the voter ID changes. And we worked with some of the groups in Ilfracombe to try and raise awareness through, some of the groups that might not otherwise have been aware of it. And those flags we worked with them, I think they've got the semester. So we can do something like that.
Petrol and
Well, councillor Clayton's next.
So then you can come back to John as well.
Yeah, just a quick question of clarification on that same subject. On page 41, the trans 2 for May 24. I do know some of the, but what's the family voting bit? They're trying to stop us in voting in families or what? I presume it's something to do with postal vote. But I know that they're stopping anybody who's not individual.
I'm going to get back to you on that.
I just wondered if something happened, it's something I don't.
I think it's where they enter the booth together as a family. Family voting is when family members are going into a voting booth together.
Together.
I suppose it's a
Are they being stopped from doing that?
Could you not do that?
could do.
I suppose it's trying to, it's protecting against family voting. So I think that's where it's looking to go. But obviously, it's making sure that violation doesn't happen.
You might get arrested.
I was going to say, it sounds very draconian.
Yeah.
Everyone will vote with the way that I want you to vote.
Well, let's get some clarification on that amendment.
Councillor Busher, did you want to come back on?
Yeah, I was just coming back on Councillor Petrinas, because you said we want to encourage younger people to vote, and I think that that's very important. They do engage with the system, even if they are to spoil their vote by writing something on their voting card. I think that it still shows they've come out, they've had their protest. Quite often people say, I've never had any credit, how can I get my credit rating better? And, you can sign up to credit clubs, things like that. The big one is to register to vote. So whether we use that, certainly is, people might for the first time ever want to get an interest-free credit card just to help them through the next few months. It might be worth that we point that out.
Yeah.
As a pro, and it gives you a lot of points, so far as I understand.
It does. And we have used that, we do use that. The other one that we use, which is probably a greater impact for youngsters with mobile phone contract. You need to be registered, to get a mobile phone contract, generally you need to be registered to vote. So well, it's still sort of thing because you go through credit rating agencies and so on.
Showing the age now,
So we use that to try and push it as well.
Yeah, when I was the boy, they weren't mobile phone.
I'll do that, thanks.
Yes, just on page 43, the community governance reviews. Just presumably that's parishes, is it? I just wanted to get a bit more information on that and what's happening with that.
Yeah, we carried out a community governance review just over 5 years ago, I think it was. And that's when we moved some of the areas around, so we had Westercott, the France, so on. That's when those changes came in. The advice from government is that you should review your community governance arrangements across the board every 10 to 12 years. But there has been a suggestion that some of those changes that some of the parishes might have wanted weren't picked up as part of that review. So we'll be looking to carry out another review. It's a very time-consuming process, very labour-intensive process. So what we need to do is factor in the elections that the team would otherwise have to deal with. So the intention is to start that after the parliamentary election, whenever that is.
Who knows?
When you see the intention that that would be done in time for the next set of parish elections in, is it 27 or something?
Yes, yeah. So it would be implemented on the next parish elections. Yeah.
Yeah, just one quick one, about the land registration project and, sorry.
I was going to ask that.
And investigating polygon requirements. I just don't know what that means, so that's why I'm asking the question, what is that? Just one, I know it's in delivery.
Well, my basic knowledge of what a polygon is. It's the digital footprint of the map. So the information that or the changes that are taking place is that a lot of the data that we currently hold through our local land charges registers are transferring over to the land registry. And so we need to digitise the information that we have, and then it goes over. So we're working with the land registry and other partners to cleanse that data, put it in a form, a nice digital form, so it goes over in polygons as part of that, I think.
So does this just refer to councillor and Rama?
No,
Everybody's.
yeah, it's the local land charges register contains a whole load of information. So when you purchase a property, for instance, your solicitors will do what's called a local search. And that's a search of the local land charges registers that we hold. Well, some of that information that we hold will now be going over to the land registry. Because the search will be done through the land registry and stuff.
But there are an awful lot of little bits around all the parishes that aren't registered with anybody, aren't there? Tiny bits which come to significance when roadworks and things have to be done.
Yeah, it's not about registered land.
No.
Because the land registry, as you quite rightly pointed out, is the body that holds information on all of the registered land within our area. And I think it's been compulsory registration since '86 or something like that. This is something different. This is another body of data that we currently hold, which might be, planning consents that have been issued. It might be road improvement orders, smoke control orders, all that sort of stuff. That information will be digitised and sent over to the land registry, and the local search that's currently done with us will be split. Part of it will be done with us and part of it will be land registry.
So will that information be available to the general public then?
It'll be presumably available to the public at a fee. And that's what you'll be, rather than paying us a fee for a local land charges search, the fee will be paid to the land registry to get the information.
Interesting.
I'm glad that I guessed that this is what it was. And I think the North Devon feed is about maybe £25, which is quite low. I might be incorrect, I might be out of date.
But yeah, I think it might, there's two elements to the fee. So if you do it,
I was just wondering how this is going to impact on our finances, or actually was it a loss leader? Because the figures that I've seen in the past seem really quite low for the reports that people get from that, unless it's an automated report.
the bigger element of the fee, as I understand it, and anybody else correct me if I'm.
Good job, those are the numbers, look at it.
But the bigger element of the fee that's charged if you do a local land charges search is for the element that's called the inquiries of a local authority. That will still remain with us, I believe.
Oh, right.
And you're right, I think the fee for the local land charges register is much less than that. You might be right that it's £25.
Yeah, the full level search is £60.
Yeah.
So 60 to 71 pounds. They vary between 60 and 71.
Yeah, and I think that
£11
the bigger element of that is for the inquiries bit, which
Yeah.
will remain.
Are there any other hands up on this section? Okay. We now go on to planning. I'm not sure who's just with the planning at the moment.
That's me, Chair.
Councillor Woodard.
That's one thing. I mean, I fully understand the time it takes for planning officers to do their decision notices because they have got to get that 100% right, haven't they? Because there's so much of a threat of things going to appeal, and if they don't get it 100% right, then you guys are in trouble. It costs you money, doesn't it? But now my question was on enforcement, really, because am I right? There was something like 1,200 backlog in enforcement cases. And I'm just wondering how we're catching up on those, and have we got the staff to do it now?
Yes, we have.
I think just in terms of that number, that was compliance across environmental health and planning.
Oh, yeah.
So I think the number for the planning, I think it was sort of 50-50. I think it was around the 600 mark for planning, and I think it was around the 600 mark for environmental protection, both of which are coming down. We've got significant investment. And I'll let Ken explain the planning side of what's been happening there, and also some decisions we've made around staffing.
We have got temporary members of staff dealing with enforcement within the council. The plan long term is to have a joint compliance team across planning and environmental health. With, I think the last count about 3 officers in there, but with a wider team that they can draw resource from. And also a enforcement, a planning officer within the planning team that is focused on enforcement. So there is resource being put into that area.
And how experienced are these enforcement officers? Because in my ward, I had one almost 2 years ago now, where it was to do with someone who was very forceful and rather a bully. The girl that I spoke to was having one of your apprentices, and I suggested to her, I said, please don't go on your own, because I could see she was going to be bullied and things. I mean, are they capable of standing up to those sort of people?
Yeah, I mean, the officers that we're working with at the moment are very experienced.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, you do get those instances. We try and keep a record of where we think those incidents might arise. So that we can so that we can pre-warn any officers.
That's why I didn't want to get intimidated at that stage of her career.
Yeah.
Be put off it, you know.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, Councillor Bush.
Yes, I was interested to hear how things are moving along with regard to enforcement and building regs, building control, back feeding. I know we talked about this probably 12 months ago, and that they were going to report things that they noticed weren't within planning rules. Is that happening? Has that been implemented? And is it going to cause a lot more work for which we'll need more resources to start?
Well, I don't believe that, unless John knows specifically, I mean, as far as I'm aware, information is cross-populated right across the council. The purpose of the joint compliance team is to make sure that there's joint working really between environmental health, licensing and planning teams. So far as I'm aware, we've not had any issues with building control officers not reporting planning breaches, but that's something we can look at.
I knew there was a plan to step that up because obviously building control are on site regularly.
Yeah.
So they can look and give an opinion, even if it's just this didn't look exactly how I thought it was going to look, judging from the plans, and then we can look into something. And historically, I think planning and building control, not necessarily just in this area have worked very separately, and that has been taken advantage of. And I obviously thought it was a good thing when it was said that, yes, we are going to work together, because it saves us having to send planning officers out if we've got building control going out on site
Yeah,
anyway.
and that's certainly the intention behind that joint compliance team, but at the moment, because building control is a joint service, that's not necessarily part of it, but there should still be, like I say, cross-population information between the two teams.
We have an update at some point.
Yeah, we've got the building control joint committee coming up in a couple of weeks, and then following that, I've got a team meeting with the team, so I'll pick that up with the team and the manager, and then I'll report back to them.
Thank you.
Thanks, John. Councillor Lever.
Yeah, sorry, I mean, excuse my ignorance, if I've got this wrong, in terms of what plans are looked at where, but I don't see the development of the joint local plan review.
No, that's part of the programs.
Part of the
Councillor Bullock.
Just carrying on what Councillor Bushell said, what's the situation with, I understand that you have private building control firms, and I know certain places within my own ward where that has not been done, that could have been reported to enforcement. How does that work? Because you obviously with your own team, you can liaise, but
Yeah, I mean, I'd probably be speaking just off the top of my head, but I would suggest probably there isn't that same cross-flow of
no,
information.
that's definitely not, yeah. That's for the troubled eyes.
Happy with our members? I think it's organisational.
Yeah, that's Nikki Gordon, but again, she's not here tonight, but we'll do our best.
Any questions on that, members?
Let's ask one question then. It's the same question I've asked a million times. Mental health has been flagged as health and safety. How are we evolving that with the legislation that's coming through?
Yeah, we've done huge amount of work in relation to the wellbeing of staff. If I start listing it, I'll probably miss bits and pieces, but we had an organisational development group made up of staff across most of the services within the council. So we've got information coming from grassroots, if you like, about what's happening within the council, how people are feeling. We do a full-on survey of staff, but we also do a monthly, I can't recall what now, but a monthly sort of touch base with staff, where we send something out. 2 questions on there: how are you feeling this month? Are you feeling positive? Are you feeling negative? That type of thing, and just ask them to provide a quick response to that. We do that every month.
Is that email or is it completely anonymous?
It's completely anonymous. It goes through the website and just do a couple of questions. It takes about 10 seconds to do. And it's just looking for a snapshot of how people are feeling at that particular time. We also provide support through counselling services. We have regular catch-ups between managers and staff as well, just to make sure that everything is okay with individuals. And where we pick up on particular issues that you know are beyond the sort of norm, if you like, then we address those as well with the members of staff with targeted assistance and support. So it's a very central part of our wellbeing response for staff.
Thank you.
Basic property and regeneration.
Yeah, that's Sarah Jane Mackenzie Chaplin, but the annual we're trying to pick up.
The other question we've got there, sorry, Chair, is that this asset management system costing £40,000 seems quite a lot of money. I don't know what it's for. What is it?
The first item.
Like a computer program?
Yeah, so Chair, Asset management system records every asset we've got. We need an asset management system because it also derives the valuations that go into the council's accounts. So you need to have a comprehensive system that does valuations, calculates all the depreciation on those assets, pulls information around conditions of assets, and talks about when sort of properties, conditions, maintenance programs need to be built in. So the system we have, we've had for the best part, I think, around 15 years now. So this is an upgrade to that system to have it upgraded to the latest versions, costing 40,000. In terms of ICT systems and upgrades, it's actually quite cheap, considering some of the systems we've got. We pay annual maintenance fees in the region of about 80 to 90,000 for some systems, such as our revenue development system. So 40,000 for a new version of the system that holds all our assets, and our assets are worth £120 million. So if you didn't have one, you'd have to hold it all on a spreadsheet, and that would be a significant amount of officer time in order to maintain that. So £40,000 in my view would be big value.
It's a one-off payment, this is.
One-off payment for an upgrade, and then we've got the benefit of that software upgrade. There's an annual maintenance fee that we still pay on top, but that's purely the budget as per normal. The 40,000 is just a one-off upgrade fee.
Are you saying that you don't like looking at massive spreadsheets?
Not the size of this one.
Any other questions on that? On a different topic, sorry. I was just going to ask about a couple of questions about the Ilfracombe related items. One, it says on page 54, there's a town review for Barnstaple and Ilfracombe. I didn't know whether, I don't really know anything about that. It's probably my fault, but is there anything that I need to know about that? Be summarised?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
This is pieces of work that are funded through the One Public State programme. So there's feasibility work that's been identified. We've had sort of studies done in town centres and visions, etc. work done. The Ilfracombe one, I think, is still to be done from memory. There's been some work carried out in the Barnstaple area, but I'm not aware of the Ilfracombe one being complete yet. But I can get an update from Sarah Jenny.
So that hence the extension to allow it to be done.
Hence the extension, so obviously that piece of work still to be done.
Yes, presumably the IRB would have
Yes,
some.
they'd have an input into that as well. So Sarah Jane's team obviously, obviously members of the IRB, so that would feed through that that group as well.
Okay. The Seaport Master Plan, I'm fairly familiar with that, but it's mainly about, I just wanted to ask how, I don't really understand about the drawdowns for the item on the regeneration of the infrastructure fund, which I assume is some extensions, what we're calling it.
Yes.
So yeah, I just didn't understand the note. I mean, I don't really understand any of it. But the note in particular, I mean, basically, is everything happening the way that you would be expecting it to happen? Is there anything there that's like that you need to cause a concern?
No, I mean, the only frustration is the ability to be able to utilise the full funding that we were originally awarded from government. So government gave us £6.5 million funding towards accelerating the housing delivery on the southern extension. The first drawdown, about 10% of that, about 600,000 was done. So they were costs that were incurred by the initial developer, IOX Homes. That has been drawn down for costs that were involved in terms of getting it to the planning stage and in terms of getting it on site. The next phase of funding was around accelerating the funding for the major parts of infrastructure. The situation we're at the moment is, having drawn down the first stage, the developer is actually now on site. Therefore, the benefits of using that funding to accelerate the infrastructure, in a sense, have now fallen away because the developer is actually on site, whereas the initial government funding was to bring that development forward earlier. So the discussions we're having at the moment with the developer is whether there are any elements of that project that can still be further accelerated. And that's the conversations we're having with them and Homes England, with a view as to whether we can draw down any further tranches of that funding. Because the benefits of the funding are, like the first tranche of 600,000, is once that's drawn down and paid to the developer, they repay that money back to us. It's a bit like a cash flow loan. And that money can then be recycled within further housing schemes in the future. So we've got £620,000 that we can recycle into further housing schemes for future infrastructure. We're just trying to work with developers to whether there's any other elements of that project we can accelerate further. If not, that money will need to be repaid, or the money will just not be drawn down from central government. But our aim is to try and maximise as much of that as we can.
So it's not a risk to that project as such, it's more that the money doesn't come into the system.
It is, yeah. The intentions of the money originally were to bring forwards developments where maybe they're stuck, or maybe this money would release that infrastructure to be done a bit earlier. So then it accelerates the building of the housing. But as the developer's actually on site, the intentions of the funding actually had the right outcome, because without the first tranche of funding, the developer wouldn't be on site, because we wouldn't have got to the stage we were with the current planning on there. So the first tranche of fundings had the right outcome. It's just in order to take advantage of the later tranches of funding, the developer's already on site and in essence has the funding already in place to deliver the housing.
Somebody else? Okay, so I think that was like the final one, isn't it?
Yes. And the rest of them.
Is members to note service plans and any comments and recommendations?
Include the
Do we need another recommendation about accepting the extension of time?
yes, please.
Can I move that recommendation and accept the extension of time?
Without any comment about we don't like extensions of time.
Seconded, please.
Also, one of the extensions of time that the Kelly Court, the one around public conveniences, was an extension date to April 25. So that additional change as well.
Yeah, I made a note of that one.
So recommendations proposed, was there a second? Thank you. All in favour? Oh, yes, certainly. Thank you for coming.
Don't think you have to leave. Downstairs.
See you tomorrow.
We do enjoy your company.
Then we should have the updated work programme before you, we're happy with that.
So can
Yes, well,
the next item is the briefing paper about agriculture that
Yes.
from Liz.
Yes.
It talks about a March date for a meeting. So
Yes.
presumably that needs to be tapped in to the.
It is in there.
It's in there,
Sorry.
yeah.
I thought you were going to say, why are we waiting until March to do the dentistry thing? Because
Yeah.
we've got some teeth between now and then. Whereas dentistry at the moment feels a lot like we're pulling teeth to get people to turn up to our meetings.
No, it's okay. The industry is under control and with the enormous help of Kelly, we're getting it sorted. So we'll have to come back with the date.
Yes.
So it might well be,
Down to Kelly's hard work.
it might well be a different date to the scheduled meeting, depending upon the availability of people with energy.
Some people would be really.
That's going to be my question, if members were happy to have it as a special meeting, because I think it will be difficult given the people that are involved.
Yeah.
Like we've done with the water quality one,
Yeah,
because there's a lot of people involved in that one
Yeah.
as well.
you happy with that, members? We don't
Yes.
really have-
I'm guessing, Kelly, that I know at the last council meeting, when I raised the question with the NHS people about dentistry, although the chair didn't like me asking questions about it, the lady who was presenting at that time did lean over to Bev. And if I lip read her correctly, she said, I can put you in contact.
We've got some contact details now.
So that worked.
Separately.
I've got a list of people to invite, I just need to.
I feel we're in safe hands, honestly. With you and John working together, it's going to happen.
So, Madam Chairman, I assume that we're having a separate meeting to the agriculture as well.
I mean, the agricultural one doesn't necessarily have to be in March. because the situation is still very much in the flux thing. And the decisions aren't really going to be made till later on in the summer going forward. So if you wanted to slot your dentistry one in earlier and replace us, entirely up to you.
Secretary,
Right, we'll do that. Yeah.
can I ask about that, the agricultural one then, as you guys says it's been raised?
Yes.
I mean, presumably, we're not going to wait until we get perfect clarity from government, because
Well, the information I've had today is there's more positive thoughts coming forward as to what the outcome of it's going to be, because so many farms.
Just go on to item 8.
Do you want me to go
And then
on?
if necessary, we will change the.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Do we just note item 7?
Yeah, if you just know the work.
yeah, just note the work programme, but
Okay.
we might amend it, yeah.
Yeah, so,
So, yeah. Carry on, Kat.
Okay, so I mean, so obviously you've sorry, you've all read this and everything, and basically our main concern is, the fact is we haven't got, as a district council, a rural policy. And our agriculture within North Devon is quite relevant to a lot of the other work that the council is wanting to do, especially on the environmental front. There's a lot of positives that the farming can produce for that, and it wants to be acknowledged. And I mean, farmers are struggling, and I don't know whether you're aware, upland farmers' income this year have dropped by 34% by our reduction in the BPS. And that is so relevant to it. Farmers budget for that for this time of the year when they get that payment, to pay the rent, to pay for animal feed and all that sort of thing, and that's been restricted. And the other concern that farmers have is that the emphasis is on environmental issues. You know, we've got to do public money for public good. Okay, improving air quality, water quality, things like that. That is something that can impact on North Devon Council's way forward, is saying, look what we're doing about it, you know. Our farmers are doing it, but look, the farmers are doing it. You know, the thing is, farmers' main raison d'etre is to produce food, and that is being bypassed, unfortunately. And we're only just over 50% self-sufficient in food in this country. And like we're saying, what's happened in Ukraine should have flagged up to everybody that, for goodness sake, we've got to start producing more food ourselves. And it'd be nice to have North Devon Council's support for the farmers, to acknowledge what farmers are doing, what farmers are there for, and how really relevant we are to the North Devon economy. Tourism, for instance, you know, they come there for our green and wonderful land, you know.
Picking up what you said about rural policy, it's not something we've ever done, is it, as a district?
But other councils do, don't they?
Yes.
I mean,
Well,
we'd have to look at it and look to see what would be included within the rural policy,
Yeah.
because we obviously have our own climate policy. We're developing an economic strategy with Torridge. And that will recognise the input of agriculture into our economy. What we'd be doing if we were having a rural economy is probably stripping out elements of the existing strategies and policies and just sticking it into something, another document about. So I'm not sure how much that gets us. In terms of support for the farming community, we do support the farming community already. We are through North Devon Plus, which is the local authority owned company that we own jointly with Torridge. We are running the Future Farm Resilience Programme, and Graham Wilcock, who is the business advisor there, is visiting farms right across Devon in conjunction with, I think it's DR Company, and providing advice on how people can get their way through the changes in the funding mechanisms. But also talking about farm diversification and providing advice to those farmers about how they might want to move their businesses forward. We're also doing a couple of events in conjunction with Biosphere on the 30th of January and 6th of February, one in Holsworthy, one in Billy, which is specifically for the farming community to come along and talk about how they might diversify into tourism and into other areas as well. So we are doing something, but it's not necessarily being delivered purely by the district council. It's being delivered in the main by North Devon Plus, but that is in fact delivered by the council because it is a local authority owned company, specifically set up to provide business support functions. We can look at doing other things as well. If there is anything else that's necessary for us to do to support farm communities, then we can do that. I think it would be incorrect to say that we're not doing anything.
Really, the problem is, there are different sectors advising farmers from different angles and things. There's meetings going across like North Devon Plus, there's AFA doing it as well, there's up with us, we've got Next One Hill Farming Network. They're all advising farmers and things. But when push comes to shove, they've been, say, for instance, like encouraged to do herbal meadows, £150 an acre to produce one. You've done that, then what happens next year? What do you do next year? It's not ongoing like the BPS was, where farmers had a regular income, which they've been.
Good on you.
Sorry.
We had a small.
Councillor Bushell, who else? Councillor Gibbon.
On the basic payment scheme,
Mhm.
is there any way that we could find out just, how much went into North Devon from the basic BPM? I mean, is there a way of doing it? Because it does worry me that the vote to leave you was in 2016. And we still haven't got a replacement. Environmental land management, you put optimistically eventually will come in. Nothing's come in yet.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But the thing is, prior to us leaving Brexit, we had subsidies. It was just moved over to the EU when we joined the EU. We've always had, since the Second World War, we've always had agricultural production subsidised in central government, because otherwise the general public would have to pay the real price of food production. It's always been there.
Yeah, it's always been there, but now it's been taken away and not been replaced.
Now, that's the thing, and going forward,
So what I'm trying to find out is how much have the farmers actually lost out in North Devon? How can we find that out? Is there a way or not?
There's a national figure, isn't there?
There's a national figure, like I said, the national figure is that Upland Farms have lost 30% of their income. And next year will be worse.
I can see whether North Devon Plus have got that information. I
They
don't
might
think
help
they
from
do.
that,
Yes,
yes.
That would be useful.
Yeah, that'd be useful. Councillor Bushell, did you?
Yeah, I understand, councillor, but I thank you for this report. I understand that it's been strategically worded, so it has a slightly lighter touch and some optimism, which I have no idea how you managed to get that in there, because there isn't any optimism.
Farmers will always work around things, don't worry.
I mean, the number of farmers that I'm bumping into now, and they're all saying cash flow, cash flow, cash flow.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how many assets you've got, a very small stumbling block could bring down a massive farm, because they're not being supported by the financial institutions. And this government, it's beggars belief, because this government, as I understand it, were ready to release a paper about the subsidies they were going to give farmers. And then they changed their agriculture minister. So now we need to wait 2 months, because he wants to make it out, I guess, like he's written this document. And the most accurate figures that I can remember are that for every £1 that goes to a farming subsidy, 7 is generated in the local economy. So we're not really talking about farmers here, although we are, and we're battling for the farmers, because we all know farmers. There's no way you're in North Devon, you don't know them, and you don't. Even dairy's not looking good with the cuts that they've had. But a 7 times multiplier means the government are doing really well for the GDP by giving these subsidies out. So not only are they going to help feed people, they're also going to help boost their GDP. And we all know that governments just care about increasing the GDP. What is very worrying is farmers, they've always been stoic and refused to do things that aren't farmers because they are custodians of the land. They're now turning to the only thing that we can do to keep the roof over our heads is to put loads of land into all these random things which they don't necessarily
They don't
consider as farming. So they don't feel that they're farmers, and if we take away the things like the sheep grazing, we'll alter. Not that I'm saying that wildflower meadows are a great idea in certain areas, but farmers are considering putting them in areas which they would rather farm if they could. Because the landscape of Devon really is something special, not only for tourists, just for everyday people going for a walk up on the moors. It brings a lot, and I think it's so short-sighted that the government can be playing either politics with staving off making announcements because they've changed the minister, or even, I would guess, not even giving the resources to get this piece of paper done in time for succession planning by the farmers. I mean, the BPS runs out this year, and all the farmers I've talked to still have no idea. And their land agents are saying, just hold fire. And they're like, well, that's great, but we can't keep holding fire because, as you know, the lambs last year, you lost money on your lambs.
Land prices were brilliant this year. That's the only good bonus.
Well, they said that if you put in the input costs, so if you were running it without any other inputs into the farm, that they would have run a loss. I'm not saying that the prices weren't good, but they're not reflective of the production costs, which is why we need the subsidies and the support for the people who work and operate agricultural holdings.
This is why, Madam Chairman, I think we need that agricultural meeting as soon as possible, not 6 months' time. I think we need it now.
Councillor Lever.
I find myself in agreement with Councillor Bushell on this. The thing that what we see here is just a national failure of government to understand that both the pressures that the farming community comes under, but also the timescales that everybody's working to. I mean, talking about the payment scheme, there being no replacement for that. I mean, this has been talked about in government for years and years and years. And it's similar to the situation that happened when we finally left the EU, and lorries were queuing up at the ports. Fishermen were throwing stuff back into the sea because the systems weren't in place, and it goes on. So just last year, the government were talking about changing planning policy on onshore wind, which is a diversification that farmers can go into. That didn't happen. The National Planning Policy Framework released in December, all of a sudden, after years and years of food production not being a priority, is a priority now. And it honestly, it's very difficult for us to come up with a meaningful long-term policy while there's still this shilly-shallying around at government level. I find that it isn't taken seriously. And I do.
From my understanding, talking to our new councillor who has the ear of government and DEFRA, it's basically been generated from DEFRA as opposed to the minister. It's those advising the minister are the ones that are shilly-shallying about, as opposed to the minister. He just passes it on. But
it feels like it needs a firm steer politically.
I mean, I'd like to say one of the things I report is if we could have some help from district council to lobbying government on behalf of our farmers.
It is definitely that our MP is not screaming from the roofs.
And
She is actually doing stuff in Parliament along with dentistry and everything else, but.
I'm glad she's following what the district council have asked.
So we need people shouting about this, and yes. I hate to say it's the same. The change of ministers is the same with housing. It's the same with education. Sorry, off the subject slightly. We've had more housing ministers in the last 11 years than Chelsea's had football managers. And
Councillor, were they recent?
well, yeah, well, but I mean, there needs to be a government, and maybe this is what we need to say. There needs to be
There's
political
no
control.
continuity.
No continuity. no
And then it'll be interesting after the next election, if whoever comes in, changes the model that really.
Perhaps through the chair, I could suggest to members that we direct conversation through the chair, as is the normal sort of routine in meetings. Well, because otherwise this degenerates into like a conversation of,
Conversations that are never this interesting.
As we did at our last meeting, yeah.
I was wondering whether councillor Leader mentioning Chelsea thought that Abramovich may take over the agricultural sector.
Just one observation, that I'm not terribly knowledgeable about farming, but I have been reading that the average age of the farmer now is 57. And I wondered whether that was an additional big, like, ticking time problem as well, with the number of people that are leaving farming. And I don't have any solutions about how this would ever go into a policy. Whether you found that.
Yeah, I mean, this has been a long-term thing. I mean, it is so difficult for youngsters to get into farming now, because a lot of the agricultural land is being sold off to people that are buying land now for offsetting, planting of trees and things like that. Puts it way out of the budget for a young farmer to buy that for starters, just to get the land. And the farm machinery, there's going to be grants for farmers for capital works, but those farmers, they've got to match fund it, and they've also got to buy that equipment before they get the money back from the government. So young farmers it's so difficult for young farmers to start off there. And, at some point, it's going to be a crisis.
Yeah.
Yeah, Chair, I was also wondering whether we have a list of invitees to the agricultural meeting that we're talking about yet. And
That's what I was going to suggest to you, Councillor Petrus. We have the group of us, next thing to do, we have a meeting.
To the chair.
Sorry, to Chairman, sorry.
I think Kelly will need some details.
Yeah. I was going to suggest now, within the next few weeks, we have a meeting, the group of us together and decide who we need to invite to the
in
meeting.
the next week or so.
Yeah.
In case I'm not involved in that conversation, can I please request that Graham Wilcock from North Devon Plus be involved?
Yeah, he was one of the.
I think they're on the list.
Picking up on the point that was made about, the average age of farmers, one of the most pressing aspects that he reports back at the team meeting is the number of farmers that he's gone out to visit who are 75 to 85 and have no continuity plans for the business.
Yeah.
And especially those tenant farmers as well in that position.
You get some farmers in their 70s and 80s, and the boys in his 60s never written a check, It's,
So I think we agree that, Councillor Bullett's report is very good, actually, very.
It is. It's well placed as well.
Yeah, seriously, thank you very much for that. So hopefully we'll hear soon.
yes, we'll have another get together.
Yes.
You can
Lovely.
arrange that.
I did
It's up
speak
to
to
you.
one of our advisors who comes along to the working party meetings, and they said that they thought it was time that we met again. So hopefully there are some changes going on behind the scenes that might have some level of positivity.
So what's going on? Yeah.
But it is important that we also have a hope that diversification away from farming isn't really a solution for farming. It's a solution for a lot of other things, but farmers, we know, it's in their blood. They just want to do farming. They don't want to diversify, but they have to. And it's quite sad that they're being forced basically into other financial sectors or economic
Can I
sectors.
move that we note the report?
Yeah.
No, seconded.
No Councillor Bullett's report, and I'll formally close the meeting.